Thank you for joining me in this video. This is a video that's been some time coming, and to be honest, I've been a little bit reticent about making it. As a writer, I don't like explaining my books and explaining my journey. I always want the writing to do the talking for me, which is the whole point of my activity, both from a structural and craft point of view, and certainly from an artistic point of view. However, following some of the comments you have left in social media and some of the emails that some of you have sent me, I got thinking about this and I realized that there's actual value in me doing this, which is why I'm doing it. Certainly I wouldn't want to waste my time if I didn't think that there was, and I certainly would want to waste yours. So by explaining my trajectory as a writer and the direction my writing has taken over time, over about 12, 13 years, I will also show you the choices I made and why I made them, the things which I followed, and there's a direct application to the things which I'll point out, which you can actually apply to your own life and certainly to your own business. So there's a multiplicity of value to be derived from following this sort of deconstruction of my own journey. So without further ado, let's start from midpoint. 2012, 2013, my book Google Semantic Search came out. It was not the first book I'd written at the time. I'd had several other books on search, but it was the first major book where I basically went out on a limb, not following established dogma, if you like, where search was concerned, and extrapolating into the coming of semantic search, because I could see that it was on the way from all the research and the writings that I'd been doing, and certainly the direction that Google had established at the time with the constant reiterations of its search engine. Now, when Google Hummingbird came out, of course, and semantic search became a thing, my book was kind of prophetic. It really took off in sales. I received a lot of accolades from many people in the industry, and I was gratified by the emails that came from people who had read the book, thanking me for providing them with a guide on semantic search, because it was a very new thing at the time, and many people didn't understand what the transition was when we're going from, as Google said at the time, strings to things. As I said, that book was not my first one. I'd already written several books on search. Before that, I was already working in the industry as a consultant and sometimes as a practitioner of search engine optimization. But that book established a trend for me in basically using cutting-edge research, using my own experience, using my own knowledge, using my awareness of what was happening in the market to establish the next thing. So when it did come out, and it was gratifying, I received a lot of emails from readers telling me how thankful they were because it was a guide that they could use. And certainly my own profile in the industry rose significantly as I was invited to many of the conferences to speak about semantic search at the time. The safest thing for me at the time was to continue pumping books out on semantic search. And certainly anybody who follows search these days knows that this constant evolution of technicalities, which then reflect on the practical applications that a website owner or a business owner can actually establish and put into practice in order to perform, to have their business, to have their website perform better in search. But those technicalities are just that, technicalities. That happens all the time. And in my mind, it's like driving a little bit. You learn how to drive. Let's say you learn how to drive on, I don't know, Model T Ford, ancient car, rudimentary gears. Everything is manual. And then you go to a Tesla, or you go to an electric vehicle of any kind. The leap in terms of technology is so many orders of magnitude that they're entirely different beasts. What is not different? You're going to have to familiarize yourself with those things, obviously, as you transition from one to the other. But what is not different are the fundamentals. You still need to know how to drive. You still need to know how to apply common sense rules on the road in order to ensure your own safety and the safety of others. That is not going to change. If you get a rocket car tomorrow, and it's so difficult to learn from a technical point of view that you actually need to take lessons in order to know how to drive it. And there are custom-made cars like that, where they need about, I think, 12, 13 hours of tuition before you actually get inside them. You still need to know how to drive. If you don't know that, everything else is useless. If you know that, then everything else will only make you a better driver. Search is the same. So sure, it changes all the time. Sure, I could keep on pumping books out on search because I was already established in the industry. And by the time the second year of Google Semantic Search, I was so established in the industry that I was consulting with Fortune 500 companies on their search marketing strategies. I was traveling the world quite extensively, giving talks to their VP suite managers who would then go back and guide their teams. So I could certainly do that. That was the safest thing for me to do. And I didn't, because like with driving, if you know how to drive, if you read the book in the first instance and you've got the basics, all I can give you after that is either the same couched in different ways. It's boring for me. It's a con for you, because you'll be paying money to buy a book, hoping it would help you, and it might, but it probably wouldn't, or it wouldn't help you more significantly than the first book. So, I didn't see the value in that. And certainly from an ethical point of view, it didn't seem the right thing to do. Certainly from an intellectual point of view, it was not engaging enough for me. And if I'm not intellectually engaged, then my emotions are not in place either. I'm not excited. And if I'm not excited, my passion is not there. And if those things are not there, then I'm just basically writing a book in order to write a book and make sales. And yes, make a living, because we all need to do that. But I also need to feel good doing it. And it didn't sit right with me. So after Google Semantic Search, I looked around for the next thing. And as I was doing that, and in retrospect, what I was doing at the time is actually writing a trilogy, non-fiction, but there was a theme that was basically connecting each book that I tackled. And the next thing for me was decision making. Now, it may seem entirely different from search, but it isn't. It's human behavior. When we're talking about search, essentially we are discussing how people behave on the medium of the web, how people behave on the digital web that connects us all, not just through laptops and computers, but also mobile phones, and also through the visual aspects of the online and offline world. So that was fascinating to me. I thought, if we look at decision making, what actually guides it, then we'd be in a position to make better decisions, primarily in our business, because it was a business-focused book, but also in our life. So the Sniper Mind was born out of that matrix of questions that arose about behavior and search and decision making. And neuroscience was on the rise at the time. Now it's a thing we always come across articles with neuroscientific content. We quote studies, we quote statistics. But at the time, because it's 2016, 2017, when that book came out, like 3-4 years later after Google Semantic Search, and certainly took me 3 years to research and write. At the time, it was really new, and it was so new even to me. And even though I have a scientific background, I struggled with the research. I spent roughly, at my own estimate, about 10,000 hours going through studies. I interviewed 100 serving and retired snipers from across the world, from 3 armed services, different countries. I have about 300 interview hours with them. And I had all this material, which then I had to synthesize in a way that made sense. And the struggle for me at the time wasn't just that it had to make sense to me, but then I had to make sure that it made sense to you as a reader. So it was a double thing. So I had to basically learn it, internalize it, and then write about it. So the Sniper Mind was born out of that direction. And it had a connection with search, with the previous book. Because if we think that search is search engine optimization, the Sniper Mind was essentially brain optimization. It was how do we learn to become better in our own decision making when we are under pressure? How do we learn to mediate the negative factors in our behavior so that they don't affect us so much, so that then our behavior serves us in the long term better? So the sniper mind essentially was that. And from that, because it was business focused, it was directed at a business audience, because that was the predominant slice of my audience at the time. I aimed it at, people running their own businesses, startups, executives, anybody who's in a key decision-making situation. I drew sort of insights from real life battlefield scenarios and from the hundreds of interviews I had and from the almost, several hundred studies I went through. And from that, I sort of drew points which you can apply to your business and your life. So the Sniper Mind was the next natural book. And did it stretch me? Absolutely. I mean, I got to a stage at one point because I was chasing a deadline, which, was set by my publisher, where I had to present the manuscript. And I was working like 10, 12-hour days, going through everything and synthesizing everything and learning, and my brain felt stupid because I was learning new things all the time. But I did get to a point where I actually questioned my own ability to finish it. It did finish, it did come out. Amazing reviews, people loved it. Great for me, even though it was something new in the direction I had taken, and I seemed to have moved away from search. Crazily enough, it led to even more requests for speaking engagements. I traveled across the globe even more extensively. And to give you an idea, 2 years after it came out, 2019, just a year before COVID actually, it was a year when COVID was beginning to come out, but we're not in a big way just yet. And in that year, I covered 55,000 air miles, just crazy. I could have had my own jet. So just to give you an idea how, things lead to other things. And obviously, every time I give a talk and I come across people, I listen to what they say. I listen to their questions and try to understand where they're coming from. I see their responses to the extensive answers I give, and that becomes for me a window into something else. Every time we talk to just one person, we are basically accessing a database of their own understanding, their own point of view, their own emotions, their own memories, their own knowledge, and perhaps their own dreams. It's amazing. If we really listen to another person, it elevates our own understanding, and then hopefully through the interaction we should, and hopefully we do the same for them. So we elevate themselves, their own point of view and understanding of the world. So I listened to all that. And then obviously the pandemic struck and everything shut down. So inevitably travel stopped. All the speaking engagements which I had for 2020 were cancelled. A blessing in disguise in retrospect. By the time I thought, whoa, this is terrible. How am I going to make a living? How am I going to promote my book? And then in the inaction, and obviously, as the pandemic kind of locked us all down, we kind of responded through Zoom and remote connections. And from a personal perspective, I did really well on that. I had a lot of calls, so I didn't really materially suffer. But it wasn't quite the same, obviously. It did make me think, however, because I came across so many people in so many different contexts, and certainly within the boundaries of a pandemic, which is an external stressor that no one controls, we were all experiencing the same kind of background underlying stress. We were handling it differently. We were making different decisions based on that. So from that, the next book was born, which was Intentional. And Intentional was really very closely related to the Sniper Mind, where the Sniper Mind is neuroscience applied to a business context. Intentional is neuroscience applied to a more personal context. And the whole premise of that book was that if you wanted to live your life so that it is your life as you want it to be, how should you approach it? How should you think about it? What choices should you make? And what small actions should you do that lead to the bigger ones? So in a way, Intentional, which is the third book in the Unintended trilogy, was the blueprint for establishing that at a personal level. Again, lots of neuroscience, lots of pop culture, lots of insights, lots of applicable stuff you can actually put in. And again, for me, it was a sort of taking a new path, diverging from where I was going. And because Intentional was the first book I wrote that was not aimed at a business audience. And that was scary. I had to make a real choice there. I had to think that perhaps my audience would leave me. I would not get the responses I needed. It wouldn't be received very well. So I had to sort of deal with those fears, that uncertainty. But I was convinced in myself that it was the right book to do. I was really excited about it. And that's what actually swung it for me as a decision. And when it came to publication date and the feedback I received, I was certainly gratified to see that it had resonated with so many people. So it was the right choice for me to do, both from a career perspective, perhaps, and certainly from a personal perspective, because I felt I was adding value to a world that was ready for that kind of value to be added to it. So those three books, or the trilogy, the Unintended trilogy that I wrote, following my passion in many ways, following my curiosity, following the excitement that was elicited, and also the natural progression of what's next. We can't be doing the same thing all the time. We grow stale, we grow sort of protective of what we do, and then we become reactive, and then we become antagonistic to change. So I didn't want to do any of those things. I wanted to basically constantly evolve. And they were a huge challenge in every sense of the word. They were professionally as a challenge for me. They were personally as a challenge for me. And certainly I had to change the way I approach my craft as a writer. You know, it's different when you're writing about something technical, which you know really well, and entirely different when you're synthesizing so much information, science-based for sure and evidence-based for sure, but at the same time, it is up to you to internalize it and present it. So, you know, it's less cut and dried, if you like. So I had to, again, to make countless of decisions in each chapter on how to structure it, how to present it, how to talk in it, what to say, what to include, what to exclude. So those were the three books. And then you can see that I did several things. First of all, I followed my passion. Second thing, I looked around and I said, what's next? And thirdly, I listened to my emotions. I wanted to feel the excitement. I wanted to feel that what I was doing was challenging me, stretching me for sure, but at the same time, it was allowing me to feel that I was contributing real value to the world I live in, regardless of whether, you know, people would say, hey, that's a great book, or would perhaps not receive it so well. Obviously, looking back, the outcome was positive in each case, but it's never sure. So I was taking that risk. So then, having done those three books, the question was, what's next? And the next book seemed to break the mold entirely, but it hasn't. Because the next one was built to last. It's like my current book right now. And in that, I talk about fitness, and health, which basically it's a foundation of everything. If you are ill today, if you're struggling to maintain your health, you have no energy, you have no drive, you have so many concerns that, you know, setting up a business, doing a startup, being happy becomes a real challenge. So when we think about it, the health we have, which enables us to do so many things, which so many times we take for granted, if it's not there, then it cuts our legs out from under us. We find it very difficult to stand, literally sometimes. So that's the book that came out. And again, being honest here, I never thought I would write about fitness because it's something which I personally have done all my life, and I have never wanted it to become a job. That's why I have never taught Taekwondo professionally, even though I'm a certified Taekwondo instructor. For sure, I've taken classes in many clubs and I've helped out instructors, but I never wanted to start my own business because then it's a business. You think about it differently. And for me, it had always been an outlet of my stress. I use it for decompression. I used it as a space where I would recharge mentally and physically, as opposed to actually doing something which would give me back money. So why fitness now? And this is the fourth book in the trilogy. Again, unintended. Because essentially, and again, science here plays a big part, we are finding out more and more and more about the things which we can influence, and then it's up to us responsibly to do so. And what do I mean by that? Well, I've been around long enough to remember when I was taught at school that muscles worked and they burnt energy, but our brain needed just a peanut to power it as it was solving the most difficult problem in the world. And we know now that the brain, which is like less than 10% of the body's weight, takes a full fifth of its energy needs. It is hugely energetically expensive. We know that the brain and the body cannot be separated. We know that the body influences the brain influences the body. We know that what we call confidence can be built through action. We know that what we call grit can be structured through things which we do physically, which affect how we feel mentally, which affect how we operate emotionally. We know all these things. So build to last, again in retrospect, is the inevitable next thing, or was the inevitable next thing for me. Even though at the time I thought, again, I'm taking a risk, I'm opening things up. And I'm only human, I always feel frail and inefficient and sort of not always as established as I think I am. And in my head, I have my own insecurities and I have to battle against them all the time. And the only reason I decided to take that leap of faith is because I was excited. I looked at the research, I looked at the studies, I infused it with a lot of my own knowledge and experience. I looked at to see what can be done in terms of structure to deliver value to the reader. And then I thought, hey, actually this is good. This is the kind of book I would have wanted to have 30 years ago when I was struggling with things, 40 years ago when I was struggling with things. So that's how that book came about. Now, in me explaining all these steps, you see that I had to make specific decisions on the direction my writing would take, which would take me outside my comfort zone. And this is a lesson for business. This is also a lesson for life. If you are established in something and all you're doing is treading water, I can tell you 100%. All you're doing is sliding back. But you're sliding back so slowly, you won't feel it until it's too late. The reason you're sliding back is because as you're treading water, as you're standing still, as you're telling yourself, hey, you know what? I got this. I know it inside out. I'm the master of this. Everything around you is evolving, changing, morphing, becoming something else. You don't realize it because you're in that self-created bubble. And you will realize it when suddenly the bubble kind of bursts because the things that you were doing don't work quite as well as they did in the past, and then you don't know why. You can apply this in your business. You can apply this in yourself, in your daily life. Both things work in exactly the same way. So if your business is not evolving in step with your customers, for example, all you're doing is hemorrhaging customers at a rate too slow for you to feel it just yet. But when you do, then you become critical and you will not know why, and it'll take you by surprise. If you are not changing in your own life, you feel that things are getting harder incrementally, day by day, month by month, year by year, but you don't know why. You ascribe it to external factors. Life, work, people, market forces. There's an infinity of excuses out there which we can apply. And some of them, for sure, are 100% valid. Some are kind of handy to use. But none of them actually matter. What matters is what you do inside your business or what you do inside your head and inside your body. So if you don't apply on your own those things to affect change from within, by the time that you're forced to affect change from without, the struggle will be infinitely harder. If you're running a business, what forces you to change? Market forces. Things have changed. Supply chains have vanished, competitors have become stronger, a new product has arrived in the market. Pricing and that has now become a critical point in the choice for your customers. Any of those things are external. You don't control them. You're going to have to react to them because you ignored it. Not them, they were always there, but you ignored the change that you had to make. In yourself, when are you going to try to get fit and healthy and mentally and emotionally more stable and aware? When you have a health crisis, when your doctor says, you know what, worst case scenario, you have a year to live. Then you're going to try and change things. It's really hard. So why don't we do the logical thing always and try and be proactive? Well, for the same reason I didn't make the choices I made so easily. It's difficult. You feel you're burning up energy for no particular reason. You feel that you're going to step out of something that you control to something you don't control, when in reality you don't really control that much anyway. You feel that you're going to allow your insecurities to now flourish because you're in something which is new for you and potentially you could fail. I get all that. But here's the fact. The world is complex. It's changing without us regardless. And unless we change ourselves within that matrix of connections, we will always get left behind. We will always feel forgotten. We'll always feel irrelevant. We'll always feel useless within reason. So that, in a nutshell, is the evolution of my writing, the trajectory I made as a writer, going from things which are kind of 100% business orientated, cut and dried, search orientated, just one segment of business, to something a lot broader, decision making in a business and perhaps a personal matrix, to really personal stuff, how to run your life, to how to get healthier, stronger, and happier. And in every step of the way, the only thing that drove me, well, there were two things. One is underlying, my fascination with human behavior. So that's a connective thread in pretty much every book I've written. In some it's less, in some it's more, but it's there always. But in those 4 books in particular, that thread gets stronger and stronger and stronger. It starts out from Google Semantic Search, where I tell you about behavior and about what you have to do and how to think and how to feel in some way, in some contexts, to the sniper mind, where it's a lot stronger in terms of behavior, because now you actually have to do specific things and behave in specific ways in order to be situationally aware and aware of the contexts that affect your decision making, to intentional, where your behavior is now at the forefront, to build to last, where it's all about behavior. If we don't act on the things we want, particularly when it comes to physical health and fitness, they're not going to happen. It's that simple. So that's a connective thread that's always been there and behind all this. But the other thing that's always been there is my own curiosity and excitement of how am I going to the next thing? What's going to engage my interest? What's really going to grab my attention? And if I get excited, then it comes through my writing. You get excited as you read it. So that connective thread And that sense of adventure is what actually has been the same throughout. And you could argue it's been the same throughout my entire career. But there have been books I've written and articles I've written and periods of stuff where, I reported for newspapers and magazines in the distant past, where, I was just doing a job. So sure, I was getting excited within the context of an hour or two. But, it was not a sort of life-changing thing, whereas these books are. So if you take those things away and apply them to your own business and your own life, I hope they will help you. If you are a writer listening to this and you are struggling with the same kind of decisions that I had to make, how does your writing, how can it evolve? Where does it need to take you? If you're struggling with the fear of changing direction in your writing, well, this I hope will certainly help. I totally get the fear because I felt the same thing. I totally get the uncertainty and the insecurities. I feel the same. But look how it worked out for me, simply because I refused in my mind to be held hostage by my own insecurities and by my own fears. And by making the leap forward, I was forced to evolve, I was forced to develop, and my writing along with it, my career along with it. I really hope this helps. Take care. Until next time.